Hello and welcome. It is 2 o'clock on May 15th, and today we are here for our last Friday webinar. ESUs across our state are working together. We are Nebraska Educators supporting Nebraska educators through this crazy time of pandemic remote learning. And we're thinking about the potentially we might be doing this yet in the next academic year. Potentially it's not the entire state, maybe it's pockets, but we want to be prepared. So we want to continue thinking about that. So our Friday webinars, if this is your first one, it will feel like this. For about 15 minutes, we'll have a conversation around those best practices in remote learning. Then we'll interview an amazing Nebraska educator who has come to share her remote learning plan. And then we'll have an opportunity to either play a little bit more with choice boards, identifying those must-dos and maybe some may-dos for your students, or if you would like to engage in some discussion, conversation around things like, what did we learn from that interview? Maybe brainstorming what things will look like in the future. Finally, want to remind everybody that on May 28th, we're going to have a workshop from 9 to noon Central. This will be open and online, free for everybody. The goal of that workshop is that you will leave with a good draft of your own remote learning plan. Then in June, there's a 2-day Future Ready conference that will be wonderful. That is geared toward all of your district stakeholders, including educators, as well as your administrators, librarians, your SPED family, all of your folks within your school district. There's a wonderful mix of national, statewide, and local leaders who are going to share their thoughts around what might the beginning of next academic year look like. So I'm going to stop my screen share for just a second and say hi. My name is Nick Ziegler, and I am at ESU 5 in Beatrice, but want to reiterate that this is an ESU-wide support service that we're trying to help everybody with. I see here Craig Hicks at ESU 13, and I know Peg Coover was online. I think there's some others from other ESUs here too. And of course, I'm joined by our co-hosts, Jason Everett at ESU 10 in Kearney, and Eileen Barks at ESU 2. And then we also have Andrew Easton, our ESU Coordinating Council, Coordinator of Digital Learning. So welcome, let's jump right in. So when on our website, and somebody will pop that into the chat, please, on our website, you can get to our remote learning support. And at the beginning of pandemic, and so somewhere in middle March, our Department of Education came out with some guidelines around what might remote learning look like. They identified 2 different options for districts as they're thinking about that. Either educational opportunities or enrichment opportunities. And the nutshell version of what the difference is. With an enrichment opportunity, we're thinking about more of that deepening of knowledge of what's already been learned in your classroom. Maybe in a math classroom, we're engaging students with that independent learning platform on a mastery basis, allowing students to work at their own pace. Great. An educational opportunity is this idea that we are continuing learning. This looks and it feels a lot like planning a lesson or maybe a unit in your classroom. And we want everybody to feel good about and confident in that we know you're great educators. You wouldn't be here at 2:06 on a Friday, right after schools got out, if you were not a wonderful educator. So everybody, I'm serious when I say that. So educational opportunities. The framework we're trying to promote is a 5-step process where first, of course, we need to identify what is the learning goal. And then share that goal out in the form of a student self-assessment. We need to identify where's the instruction coming from. Is this a reading? Maybe it's a video. Maybe it's the online teacher interaction. But we need to identify how are students gaining that information. Remembering this is the main distinction between an educational opportunity focused on a specific skill or standard, where we do have this input, this instruction component, and those enrichment opportunities that are more focused on that practice. So great, we want to identify the instruction. What is that quick check for understanding, that process activity where students are going to get some immediate feedback? The practice, and the product. You'll notice that here we have we've identified online and offline tasks, but potentially you don't need both. Maybe you only need one of those. You can find this planning chart when you click here. You can make a copy of it and you can make it your own. Real quick going down here, when we talk about remote learning plans, we've been working with educators across our state in creating these remote learning plans. Here you can find in a table, filterable by grade range and content area, a few different remote learning plans with direct links to them so that you can make a copy. You don't have to start from scratch, that is right there for you. If you choose to play along, and Andrew's going to talk to this opportunity to engage with us, with ESU folks, in creating some of these remote learning plans, you might just earn some money in the process. Andrew will talk about that in just a moment, but anyone who would like to get some feedback on how they're thinking about a remote learning plan is welcome to fill out this form. And then you select which of these wonderful templates you would like at the end. And once you press submit, it will create a Google slide, a one-slide Google slide, and then we can work together. We'll share it with you and with us, and we can work together to work on that project. Last thing I want to say here is that you don't necessarily have to think about this in disjuncted or not connected one-off lessons. Potentially you do build a more comprehensive unit into a remote learning plan. For example, in a social studies classroom, you might study ancient Greece, and students then in the first week will focus on the government, and the second week on the economy, and the third week maybe geographic location. And so week by week, we're slowly building up to something that would look more like what you might do in your normal context. So great, I'm going to stop my screen share and hand it over to Jason Everett to talk a little bit more about enrichment opportunities.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to put a link in the chat for you. And this is just a start of some notes that I was taking for today. And so hopefully you'll be able to find it useful. All right. So my task today was to talk about enrichment activities. And as I thought about this, I really wanted to focus on just some summer things to give you guys some ideas. And the more I started looking into this and seeing what other teachers are doing, that this stuff just super excites me. Not only for the opportunity for self-learning, but just that whole idea of being able to learning in a different environment, I guess. We've been in the remote environment for a while, the Zoom environment, and so hopefully these will give you some different ideas to get away from that. I don't have a ton of time to share all these resources, so I'll just kind of highlight a few of them. You'll notice some things that are elementary, but I tried to make this for K-12 for our last webinar as well. So I think probably the most important thing when we're thinking about enrichment for this summer is just what's your one goal that you want students to do this summer. And so do you want them to read more, tinker more, be more active, some of those things. And so that should really help you direct and guide what your enrichment activities are. The resources for learning at home, that's a resource from We Are Teachers. They have that's just a great website for tons of resources, not just for learning at home, but it might be something that you want to check out otherwise too. And then, those focus areas of reading and math, but instead of just math, I put some resources in there that Diana and our team from ESU 10 put together for STEM resources. And so hopefully you'll find something in there that you can use. Now, what really excites me is some of these different frameworks. We talked a little bit last time about passion projects, in the last webinar. And so just that idea of the Genius Hour and passion projects. And if you haven't had experience with that, I highly recommend you check out some of these links. This live binder has literally hundreds of links for Genius Hour, what it is, why you should do it. And then over here on the left, you'll just see there's just tons of different ideas for creativity, engagement, inquiry. There's just some really cool things with this Genius Hour. And to frame that around some activities for the summer could be super fun. And then that got me to thinking about, everybody does have their own creativity. Everybody has their own skills. No matter who you are or what you do, you're good at something, you're creative with something. You might not think so, but there are a couple things here to help pull that out. This Find Your Grind could be an awesome way for you to, for your students to find their niche. This is really designed for those kids who probably don't necessarily like the traditional education model, but yet they still like to learn. They're still curious and creative and things like that. But there's this assessment here that they can take, and it will point them in the direction of some interest that they might have. And so I highly, highly recommend that one. That's Mike Smith from Lincoln, Nebraska, developed that whole program. And so they have a huge building there in Lincoln where students can come, but their online program is nationwide, and it's a great thing. And then the second one there is an Adobe survey to help you find out what your creative type is. And so here's all the different creative types: the adventurer, thinker, artist, producer, innovator, visionary, maker. And so these are really fun to get in, and once you're in there, it gives you a little profile of what that looks like. And so I encourage you guys to do that too. And then lastly, knowing that teachers also need some enrichment activities. And so I did some research on just what it takes to do your summer recharge. And so hopefully you'll find some things in here. There's some podcasts, the Good Life podcast, which we will share later too, and then maybe not overdoing it, but taking that social media break, doing the digital detox, thinking about some of those things, just getting away from it for a while. So hopefully those will help you recharge. So with that, I'll turn it back.
All right, well, gonna kind of transition, I think, now to our featured teacher special interview here that we're gonna have with Melissa Pilikowski today. So very excited to be able to just chat. We haven't spoken via Zoom or anything here since this is all kind of happened.
No, just phone calls, and text, but no, we have not I haven't seen your face. Yes.
But it's good to see you being a part of the community here, and we're grateful to have you share. For those of you who don't know Melissa, and she's gonna be mad at me for doing this, she is an EDU Nebraska All-Star. I just really appreciate getting a chance to collaborate with her anytime that I can, and so you guys are. I'm really excited to have her here today. Melissa, you want to give us a little kind of background, who you are, where you teach, and some of the other, I'm going to ask you this too, some of the other things that you're invested in, because I know that you're also doing some webinars and things yourself.
Okay, so I'm Nebraska born and bred. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Nebraska, and I see some Cedar Rapids names on our webinar today. I started teaching in Kepaha. I went down to Sydney. I'm now back in Valentine, teaching in the same room that I student taught in. So I always love that full circle of I'm back where it all started. I'm a big advocate of English language arts. I teach juniors and seniors English, but I've taught 6 through 12 in that area. And a big advocate of technology integration. I host Games for Ed Twitter chat every Thursday at 7 p.m. And I'm also a member of the On Education podcast team. And we do live streams every Friday night at 7 p.m. And we just talk about whatever's going on in education, which right now it's COVID-19. And that's one of the things we'll talk about tonight. I know another thing we're going to talk about is what schedules might look like, and is block scheduling going to surge this fall?
Oh, that's interesting to think about too. And what other, I guess, thoughts have you kind of had? And this is the way that we really sort of opened up, I think, the conversation in the elementary discussion as well. Is first of all, are you done yet with school? Is the school year ended, or you still have kind of a couple days left here in the home stretch?
We're done with new material. We finished new material last week. This week I've had just a few straggler assignments work coming in. Mm-hmm. And then tomorrow we virtually graduate all the kids, and next week we check out.
Wow. Well, and if you're like me, I've had some assignments coming in pretty late, and Google Classroom tells me it's like 2:43 in the morning, and what are you doing working on English? But I'm so grateful. But just an odd time really with a lot of that stuff. What have been some of your reflections then, just kind of looking back on this? And I know it's something that you're in conversation with other people about a lot, that just kind of, I don't know, that you're taking away as we think about maybe even if we do have to teach in this format again in the future, not even that we have to have answers. We're all here today, honestly, just to be a part of the dialogue so we can grow from that, because nobody has this figured out yet, right? So what part are you sort of trying to figure out, or feel like you got a better grasp of March to now?
One thing that's actually really been on my mind that teachers or districts or everyone as a whole is going to need to start thinking about is what is worth teaching. Because if we have to continue this format in the fall, we can't teach everything that we're used to in the classroom because we don't have kids for 5 hours a week. And I think it's time to really take a hard look at our curricula, and we might have to kill some sacred cows and really take a look at, does teaching iambic pentameter or Shakespeare in general, and we're going to start losing viewers really quick because I'm suggesting throwing out Shakespeare. I teach Macbeth, I do. But, if we are limited to certain things, or if we're limited to a certain amount of contact to our students, we have to prioritize. And we need to stop teaching such a broad area of material, and we need to get deeper with just a fewer number of things and teach those really well. So that's what's been on my mind the past couple of weeks, is how are we going to start making those decisions? Because I think that that's something that's been apparent the past couple of months, is we're just trying to
Wrap our minds
Get a
around.
target. Yeah. You
Yes.
know, we're seeing, throwing stuff against the wall, seeing what sticks. And now after this little pilot program that we've all been thrown into of remote learning, we need to get a lot more intentional.
Oh, and I like that word intentional there too. And I'll probably have you actually transition to bringing that like document up if you don't mind.
Sure.
But yeah, it certainly was. And we've, in our conversations, just sort of call it emergency remote learning, which is what we're sort of thrown into here March to now. And then as we look to potentially revisiting that in the fall, at times or with any, hopefully not consistency, but yeah, how do we start to just be more intentional and scale up? And I really feel like this time frame has been familiar in some sense. I went from one district where we had 85-minute class periods to a district with 35-minute class periods. And that was 6 years into teaching. And it blew my mind. I was terrible, I feel like, as a teacher that first year. And I was frustrated a lot, not because necessarily what I was doing was poor, but it didn't meet my expectation. And I think that that's a frustration that I've heard from a lot of teachers right now is, Hannah brought it up in the last conversation, grace. Give yourself some grace as you acclimate to this new, you shouldn't expect yourself to be amazing here yet. But also having that growth mindset of, hey, there's a lot of potential here if we can do some curriculum triage, like you were talking about, and go from there. So yeah, do you want to share a little bit of the things you had an opportunity to kind of introduce in your classroom and kind of really this, again, back to this template, this auto-generated weekly plan here that we have available on the DAP site?
All right. So what I did was I took the lessons that I use and the activities that I use for teaching bias and this component of my digital literacy unit, and put those into the template. So really there's a lot of other materials that I've linked up, and I think that I have shared the links to this. So if no one can, I will put a link to the slide in the chat later on so that everyone else can take a look at some of those links as well. So we begin the journey with an introductory slide deck, and the slide deck has both an introduction to bias and some examples of what bias is. And then in the second half of the slide deck allows for students to look at some headlines of MSNBC, Fox News, and then they can have their third source is a choice of their own, because I'm a huge advocate of student choice. It's the most important thing. And they start kind of seeing what the differences are. And then moving on to sail further and just some practice. I'm, again, a big proponent of game-based learning too, and there are a lot of great digital literacy games out there. 3 that really work with fake news and biased news is bad news, and Fake It to Make It and Newsfeed Defenders. And I tell the kids in the instructions, those really are scaffolded from probably the easiest to play to the most complicated to play.
Which one's your favorite?
My favorite,
I'm putting you on the spot here.
I would have to go between, I think I would say Newsfeed Defenders. It's an iCivics game, and I really love iCivics. Fake It to Make It is really great though too, because you actually play the part of trying to kind of be an internet troll, and you're trying to actually sway opinion. So you're playing the villain, and it gives kids a lot of insight of, that's what they're doing. You know, you put up kitten pictures on a tweet to get people to follow you, and then you start throwing in the biased stuff.
Okay.
So it's an interesting take on that. And then 3 connects, our third step connects with the second sail further step, where depending on whichever game you chose, you write an evaluation of that game. And not just the evaluation of, what was your experience like and how much do you like or not like the game, but do you feel like it's really teaching what you need to know about bias or about fake news? Because this is toward the end of our fake news unit that we do. And we do this on Parlay, and I love Parlay. It's a great discussion website, discussion panel website. It anonymizes students' names so they don't know who they are writing to. And it's really, really easy to give peer feedback. I think there's a lot of apps out there that are really clunky to use, and Parlay is one that it's pretty simple for kids to jump on and use very quickly.
Excellent. In looking through this, I just really love that the instruction piece is still here. I think that sometimes it's tempting to, and I know we were doing a lot of enrichment activities over the course of this spring also, but to just sort of go, here's your content, here's your assessment, throw it back my way, and I'll put some feedback on it, if we need to kind of revise some things moving forward. And with secondary students, they probably have some degree of prior knowledge, but I do think it's good to go in there and have that teachable piece and have the practice prior to the creation of that kind of final product. And so just the start to finish, this is really great. And I like the way this is organized on here too. I noticed you put kind of that 1, 2, 3. That's like a subtle, but just a way to sort of make this linear. Was that something you had to think through? And
absolutely. One thing that I've seen a lot on Twitter and just noticed in my own children's work, I have a high schooler and 2 in middle school, is sometimes we as teachers need to step back and actually look at our lesson design, because to us it's intuitive. We have designed it, and it may not be as intuitive or easy to follow from a student or parent point of view, because parents are frustrated. They are really frustrated.
Oh, and that leaves an inbox that I don't want to revisit.
Amen. So sometimes, we want design to be attractive and engaging for our students, but we can't overlook the effectiveness of it. So even just numbering 1, 2, 3 and simple design factors of, in America, we read left to right, up to down. So my eye starts in the upper left-hand corner unless there's something else that's dragging my eye away, and I'm going to scan the screen that way. So if we're not putting our steps 1, 2, 3 in order, either horizontally or vertically, it becomes overwhelming to kids. And we know some of our kids have a low frustration level, and especially when they're not in the classroom with us, we've got to help them out as much as we can.
Yeah. Oh, and I know from that parent lens too, it does get challenging. And so I love this document because this is something that you could share digitally, and the hyperlinks are in there. It's also something that you could print off as a 1-pager if it's, you want to have that hard copy and are distributing your lessons that way. And so that said, man, time goes fast here with all this. Melissa, do you have a kind of like one parting point to maybe wrap things up with for this portion of our webinar today?
Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Don't present a lot of new apps, whether you're, I think, a Microsoft school, a Google school, or whatever you are. The Google Suite, the Google Suite and the Microsoft Office 365 or whatever you use, they have so many tools already that are so easy to modify that if we have to go back to this, I wouldn't suggest introducing a lot of new stuff. I would keep it basic.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, thank you so much for your time today, being part of our conversation. You're awesome. And we're going to throw it to some breakout rooms so we kind of keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. And we're going to do some breakout rooms. Either you're going to make a choice if you're going to go to choice boards, or you're going to stay and do a conversation. I'm going to have Nick explain that in just a little bit. But I just want to reiterate what Melissa said about the KISS principle of keep it simple. Our parents need that. And these documents that you're seeing can be delivered through any LMS that you have. Have that one-stop shop for those parents and those students. That's the best way. So Nick, why don't you explain what we're going to do next?
Excellent. And so now we have the opportunity to, so wait 1 second on that poll. I guess got a response. So either you can choose A, that you would like to stay in this room and explore choice boards. So you saw a good example in Melissa's remote learning plan of giving students some choice. And so here she just put them in right there on that remote learning plan. You're in the main room, you'll explore some other ideas for how you might organize those must-dos that everybody's gonna get done and those may-dos where students have some choice. So that's A. B is if you would like to engage in some conversations. So for example, a takeaway from our interview. Or maybe, so this is an important topic too, what are some ideas for how can we build relationships at the beginning of the year if we're still doing remote learning? And finally, maybe what are some things you want to learn more about? Please only take another 5 or 10 seconds. Select A if you want a more presentational experience with choice boards, and B if you want a more conversational experience around these guiding questions. Of course, you can have conversation about anything you want, but then those are the guiding questions. Another 5 seconds to press that full button. Only about half of us have done it. Please do. All right. So I'm going to now create some breakout rooms. If you desire to be in a breakout room, then you accept the invitation. If you desire to stay here and do the conversation around choice boards, then you just don't accept the breakout room invitation. All right, I'm gonna open them up. As you're joining, good. I'll pass it back over. I'll join those and provide some more instruction. So I'll stop my share. And so join your breakout room if you would like to.
And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share with you a link. I put a link in the document. I'm sorry, I put a link in the chat for you to click on. You will make a copy. And what we did was we created a choice board for you. Andrew is going to spend some time while I'm talking, and he's going to put some links to some different different choice boards in the chat. If this is something that you want to fill out, this is an opportunity for you to take this graphic organizer and say, hey, I really want to use this for, maybe I'm going to use this for social studies. Use this choice board for social studies next.
Hello, how's Ann? Ann's at Thayer Central in Hebron, Nebraska. That's in my neck of the woods. How about Darla and Ruth? Where are you guys from?
I'm from out in Potter Dix area, out near Kimball, so I'm on the opposite side of the state. So,
welcome.
And I'm from Holdridge.
Excellent. And Peg, of course, you've met Peg, is at ESU 10 in Kearney. Peg, do you have access to the Padlet wall?
I thought I did, but I must have closed it.
No worries. I just put it in the chat for everybody. So you should see in the chat the link to the Padlet wall.
Thank you.
I'm going to pop in and out of rooms and make sure everybody else knows what's going on too.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you all.
Nap, and then they can work for another hour and then go take a break, or they can work all at night. So that's all about agency. Choice boards incorporate learning styles and learning preferences. We are all basically visual learners. However, some of us have more preference for kinesthetic activities, or we'd rather do some written activities. Choice boards allow for choice and voice. It also allows for letting them have that must do and may do that are presented that Miss Melissa was talking about. You know, you can have a unit long choice board, you can have a lesson specific choice board, or you can have some extension activity choice boards, like maybe even with the product at the 5th step of your remote learning plan. That product, maybe you have a whole choice boards of different products that students can say, this is how I'm going to show the learning. There's a link there for you. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to show you a few examples. So here is a Valentine's Day, and you'll see that there's just a lot of different ways to choose their response. Maybe they're going to create their own response for the reading, or they're going to create an infographic, or they're going to maybe do a sound track, or they're going to do a one-word poetry or a one-word paragraph. Just an example of one type of a choice board. Andrew, I'm going to have you go ahead and explain this, even though it's elementary.
My students have already failed at the public school and have already, basically they've already failed at the public school. And
Right.
having them then try to put them online or have them work independently is really difficult.
That executive function component is really, really important. I even had a couple of my AP students who just started to lag behind and just seemed to be floundering. And, you know, I had to set up regular Zoom meetings with them just to touch base, just to say hello. They didn't always need the help, but they're only 10th graders, so they're sometimes that executive function issue, even for students who haven't failed, it is really something to take into account. Sometimes they just need that face-to-face. That motivation comes from having a teacher there to say, hello, how are you doing? Name one thing I can help you with today. You know, I just right before this had a 15-minute Zoom meeting with one of my AP students who just about failed. He's dual credit, and I didn't think he was going to make it. And but he said the same thing. He said once there wasn't somebody there to talk to him every single day, he just felt like he didn't have a reason to keep on going.
Yeah.
I did put a link in our chat about student agency that has some links in there as well. I think one of the challenges we have with kids is we take such ownership of them in our classrooms and help.
It's very similar to an app.
So a couple different things on this. There's always this back button for students. And I know that this was created for elementary students, but I have worked with middle school, high school students too, and they need just as explicit directions as our elementary kiddos do. And I think you guys are nodding at me right now too. Another thing I like about this choice board is that there is a video of Andrew explaining what the task is. You can take a very quick video, put your Zoom on, take a video, share your screen, and you can explain to the students exactly what you want them to do. This is an example of a choice board that actually came from the New York Times. Choose a picture prompt that looks good and intriguing about a post. Be part of our film club and watch certain films over the summer. You could have a choice board for summer activities and for summer enrichment activities. Another example is this is an interactive playlist, and I wanted to point out this piece right here. You can see directions. You must accumulate at least.
For me, so, yeah. But you know, recently I learned more techniques, yeah, for my online class, yeah. Hi, Nick. Yeah.
I'm curious on the second question about building relationships. I know it's maybe a little bit easier in high school because some of you teach multi-grades and stuff. But if we start out, let's say freshmen coming in that you've never had, what are your thoughts on trying to build those relationships with new kids?
Sorry, you miss how you miss the relationship between students?
Yeah, to end, this is to anybody, and thank you, Gloria. I didn't mean to direct it just to you, but anybody that has new students coming in the fall, if we're remote right off the bat without having personal interaction, how do you, what are ideas and ways to build relationship with those kids that you've never met before? Let's
And
just pray.
I
Let's
kind of
pray we want to get back.
Yeah, I kind of want to add on to that question too of building those relationships and also developing the procedures. Like
Yes.
when you're in class, you can develop
Yes.
all these procedural things. It's really hard to develop procedural things if you haven't ever seen those kids before. And I think those kind of go together. Those first couple weeks of school, that's where you're building a lot of both of those.
I thought, and this came up last time too, but just that idea of it's not just your students that you're really going to have to know, but it's also your parents. Because if you don't know what their work schedule is, if you don't know what their personality is, if you don't know how they're able to or not able to help their students, you know, what's that look like? And you might have to give extra supports to some students because their parents aren't around, where, you know, some are going to be able to support those. And so I think it's going to be duly important to not only know your students, but your parents as well.
Another thing I like to never underestimate humor, so that when you have not the joke of the day, but at least some humor somewhere, or the bonding of games, when they have had fun with you, or on the total opposite, have done something really terrible they had to go through, and then it is a bonding moment. And so using that emotional connection and then getting down to the real business of class and school work.
I want to say something about myself. Actually, you know, last year I just came to United States and I never meet any of my students. They never know who I am. And we always have online class. But, you know, when I first time I went to Grand Island, I have some students, Grand Island and Dashler. Maybe next semester I will have some students in Beatrice. I never yet met them before I went to Grand Island. When we have about maybe 3 months or 2 months, I went to there. But you know, to my surprise, some of my students, they prepare something for me. And yeah, you know, the feeling of that moment is very complex. I feel sorry for my students because I never can do anything. Like I want to give my students a hug or just how to say that, to show my I just can give them the thumb up. But to my surprise, some of my students, they prepare many gifts for me, and some students, they give me some cards. They write us something. I never thought I'm good teacher enough compared the other students, the other teachers, because they can do something easily. Just meet my students and maybe hug them or maybe talk to them directly, but I cannot. Class over, I'm nothing. So, but I think maybe don't worry about that. I think, but you know, recently some of my students, they just don't want to have class, but I can understand them. This is a special time. So I think maybe don't worry about, we never meet them, we never know them, but we just be ourselves to teach them, just like we know each other already and they are students. We can understand our students. I think they can feel us.
You must do a very good job of building relationships virtually.
She does. Lorena, you also put in there that you're going to start with seventh grade students and eighth grade. Does that explain that maybe?
Yeah, it's in Winnebago. So we have a loop program. It's for the academy to the UNL. And so, so for my first year, I got the 7th grade. And then next year I will teach 8th grade. And then the following year I will teach 9th grade. So basically I have my students for 4 years. So, but I gotta tell you, the first year was kind of hard building those relationships, and I'm still working on those, trying to strengthen those relationships. And I do miss them, and I'm gonna miss them. Having that physical contact, just high five and that kind of stuff. It's gonna be different.
Ideally, if we have to be remote at some point, it would just be wonderful if we could have at least 2 to 3 weeks with our students a month, whatever, but you don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna, if it comes up, we'll see a lot of different models and a lot of different scheduling. Yep.
Yeah.
And I love choice boards, use them frequently this year, especially with my geometry course. But I have a question, I guess, to crowdsource everyone here. I tend to still offer, like you talked about, like a worksheet, an online, a collaborative. So they're still doing the same objective, like with Pythagorean theorem or something. But then I'm discouraged by how many students maybe just want to do the traditional worksheet. They just want to check the box and move on, and I wonder if that happens elsewhere.
So we're looking for a way to go a little deeper with your assignments instead of having the students be able to choose the easier way. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, I still want to offer it as a choice because of the offline component and some student needs like you're talking about, but would like to see them try these new apps, or and I give them plenty of class time too, so they still could. And yeah, just wondering if it's happening elsewhere, if it's just me.
No, that I've been fortunate to visit with a number of people about personalized learning and things along those lines. And there's a couple different ways to think about that. Some people will choose to do some sort of pre-assessment or ask students to commit to avenues that they prefer for demonstrating, their understanding ahead of time, so that whenever they get the opportunity and they choose not to take it, you go, whoa, wait a minute, you told me you're amazing at this. And now you can use that for school, and you're not going to walk down that road. And some of them will get interested as a result of that. That still won't solve all your problems though. And so another tool that I found to be helpful is to say, hey, first time, pick whatever you want. Next time around, you can pick anything you want except the thing you picked the first time. And it forces them to then have to shift to something else. And if they get frustrated with that's okay. And you hate to steer someone away from their interests, but you can also say that it's important to learn how to play left-handed too. And that we have to kind of round out our skill set. And sometimes by asking them to move into those spaces, that's also key. If it's a larger assignment, and then I can go on for days, I love talking about this stuff. But if it's a larger assignment, I love incorporating the idea of risk into the rubric. And so if you do have the opportunity to get into dialogue with the student and say like, hey, are we really, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? Are we really venturing anything by taking this approach? I think you're capable of more. And so what could it look like? And maybe you do still pick that first thing that you did, but maybe we need to add some next level that's going to evolve the song that you created for the initial demonstration of your understanding. Let's make a music video now. Show me that you can put visuals with these words. And so there's a couple different ways to maybe stretch some of that.
Yeah, and I think too, even looking at your choices, and I mean, I want students to have ownership. I want them to have agency. And so to piggyback off of what Andrew was saying is that, you give them a choice board and then you have a conversation about what they're capable of. And also looking at different colors on your choice board. So like this one says you have to choose one of each color, right? And so you put those You strategically place the things that you want to stretch kids' thinking into a color that it doesn't matter how they do it. It matters that it gets done, but any one of those will be at a higher level for you. The must do might be the worksheet might be the first step, but there might be 2 other must do's that they have to have as well. That's a great question, by the way.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Nick, are you wanting to take us back over? You go.
All right. Well, I'll start off, but then I'm going to hand it right back to Andrew. Great conversations in the breakout rooms. And so thinking about, for example, one of the questions was, what are some ideas for building relationships with students in a remote learning format? So if we have to begin the next academic year in remote learning, how can we build those relationships? Joe Nunru is the guidance counselor out at Deschler Public Schools, and I really loved what she shared. Humor in games. Don't underestimate that power of connecting with kids on that emotional level through it. And you don't have to be a comedian, right? But let your personality show. We can still do that in those Zoom connections. So humor, and then engaging kids in some fun interactive experiences. Maybe it's a higher tech thing like a GIM kit that's that quiz-like experience, or maybe it's a lower tech thing like a scavenger hunt. Or last week, I called it a find things because I couldn't remember the word scavenger hunt. At any rate, there were some really good conversations inside of those breakout rooms. Thanks for everybody participating. I'll hand it back over to Andrew.
Yeah, I want to, as we kind of bring this in for a landing, just to say thank you to everyone in the room for being a part of this community and this ongoing conversation. As I talked about earlier, I'm not sure that we necessarily all have this figured out yet, but that's why it's imperative that we get into this dialogue so we can learn from one another and grow as we go. And just even looking at the faces up in front of me like Diana Spurk and Rosa Zimmerman. We have some people that have been here multiple weeks now with us, and so we're like really grateful for their ongoing commitment to helping us learn together. And so that being said, we do have some opportunities coming up later. Well, actually here in about 10 days at this point. So Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about we're going to do some half-day workshops where people will be able to visit with us. We'll bring in a number of folks in to help support your development of a remote learning lesson plan so that you're prepped and ready for that here coming up should we need it in the fall. Nick, you got dates for us? Oh, perfect. This helps out a lot. You have access to these resources then. And so the Friday webinar is sadly come to a close here in the next 5 minutes, but we can continue this conversation through the May workshop on the 28th for our secondary educators here that'll run from 9 to noon, so a little bit longer, but an opportunity to actually get some one-on-one help. And I'm looking forward to those workshop days. And then the June conference. This is the Future Ready Conference where the Department of Education, our ESUs, are going to co-host a 2-day event where we're going to try to answer a lot of these questions, or at least as best we can in preps for that. Because even the question that came up a moment ago about remote learning and how do we foster relationships, we're going to try to find a session for that so you can have some conversation around it. As part of our choice boards, we looked a little bit at videos, and I got a chance to visit earlier this week with Peg Coover, who's dropping some links in there right now, and she's going to be giving a session on instructional video production and using Zoom to interact with students. And so we're committed to making this an ongoing conversation. So yes, this is a standalone webinar in some sense, but we are trying to listen and be responsive. The choice board section of today came from questions you asked in the last 2 webinars. And so we're going to continue to step into those spaces and try to help you out where you need it so that you feel confident and ready to enter the fall. And we're so grateful for everything. Now, we finally, I should like drum roll, right? We have the opportunity for $250 for a select few people. We're going to get an opportunity to ask them to develop 3 remote learning lesson plans for $250. And we're going to put those actually into our OER so that we can share those out as exemplars for people to view and learn from in the same vein that we did today, right? You got a chance to see prior to Melissa's sharing, some of those examples we've already housed there. So there will be an application that comes out this week via email. So look for that email, open up that email, apply to be a part of that, and we'll hopefully get you some money so that you can do that really cool landscaping thing that you've been wanting to do, or go on that fun road trip that you maybe don't quite have the money for right now, but would love to if you have that extra $250. So again, teachers supporting teachers here, and we're grateful for everyone who's been a part of this as it continues on with the work.
So this has been a fabulous community, and I just want to acknowledge that there's a ton of links in that chat box. And so in order for you to pop that chat box out, you just click the chat button below, it should pop it out. But I want you to be able to get those links that are in there. So the way you do that is once you've popped out your chat box, there's a button called File, and there's 3 little dots. If you click those 3 little dots, it comes up to Save Your Chat. You save that chat, and it will be, you can see it in your Finder window on a Mac, or you can find it on your hard drive, I believe, on a PC. I'm not a PC, but I'm hoping that that's where you find it. Zoom creates a folder on your hard drive. So that way you'll have all of those links in that. Now they're not active and it's not really pretty, but you'll at least have them. Downloads on your PC, Nick says. He's a PC, I'm a Mac.
Let's throw it to Nick to close things out. Nick, you got all this started, so bring it home.
All right, excellent. We love you. We do. We are Nebraska educators supporting Nebraska educators. Thank you so much for taking your time on a Friday. School's ending. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your passion. Join us in May. Consider joining us. We'd love to be able to pay you $250 for doing the work that you're going to do regardless. And so you'll get feedback in the process. And so we'll get an email out to everybody who has signed up for these webinars with more information on that coming early this coming week. Join us at the Future Ready Conference. Invite your friends. We'll see you soon, friends. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.